In this episode, we are going to overanalyze our hobbies, as always, to see where we are and could be spending our money. I'm going to help you budget, reduce costs, and help you finance your hobby. But first, let's look at what even requires financing in our hobbies and stick around for money and budgeting tips so you enjoy that hobby to its fullest without going into debt. Do you truly know what a hobby costs you? Let me help you with that by taking a look at some of the hobbies we've previously discussed, and maybe you can start to predict how costly a hobby could be. More on that a little later. Previously, we've discussed art-based hobbies such as drawing and calligraphy, but what affects the cost of these hobbies? Let's see, what you're drawing and writing on, the materials, the method and what you put on your chosen canvas, quality of the products used, how will you erase? If you're not using pencil, do you have to use a new canvas every time? Do we need to hire a space to create the artwork? What about one of our favorite hobbies? Cycling. We've got the bike itself, safety gear such as helmet, lights, security gear like the locks, repairs, cleaning, and even the clothes that you wear for cycling. Each one of these points has a cost to it. You can multiply that by the quantity you need of them. What about one-off purchases? What about multiple purchases? Then you can start to get a picture of the minimum cost of your hobby. But let me give you a hand. Grab a list of your hobby requirements and let's find a cost for your current or even future hobby. Knowing the cost of a hobby is simple. Perform market analysis, conduct a research on the countries producing the materials of the products you need to see the cost of benefit of using each one of them. But don't forget about the distribution of what method you'll use to get your products. Don't you need to make those products yourself or the equipment? Or do you hire a bunch of sorcerers to do it for you? Don't forget the seasons, star signs, and the tributes to the gods before you can truly understand the cost of a hobby. Okay, so now you've got your small list of requirements to get going. We can look at the cost of each of them and if it's a need or a want before we make those purchases. I can help you start to budget, but let's have a look at your hobby first, shall we? When you've got a first draft of the items you feel are required for your hobby, on the second run through, separate them into either needs or wants. If the hobby can't be done without this item or expense, then it's a need. Otherwise, it's a want. We'll always start off with a list of needs, but to have the minimum to take part in the hobby. The second column will be your wants. These can be helpful later on, but do me a favour. Leave room for a third column in your list. More on that other column later on in the video. Okay, so we've made a start on our list. The cost we apply to that is a whole new subject altogether. But let's give it a go together. When thinking about the cost of your hobby, it's good to have your list nearby and then apply a baseline figure to each of the costs. But be realistic and definitely do your research first. There are several ways of budgeting. Having a list of expenses you need, figuring out their cost, we'll look at that second part shortly. My tip for you is to get three types of cost: cheapest, slightly more expensive, and even more expensive than that. Then look upon these three choices. What benefit did the more expensive ones give you? Is that a requirement for your hobby? If not, stick with the cheaper one for now. But do keep in mind when going through this process that more expensive ones might save you money in the future, like wear and tear and other options such as that. Don't forsake all options you exclude due to budget. It's always to keep them in mind for the future. The second part is knowing how much funds you have to actually spend on your hobby, as this will impact the end result. Make sure to review your finances. Only spend money you have so you avoid going into debt. You can always save for a few weeks, months, years to meet the requirements for your hobby. I like to have a separate bank account, and each month any funds that didn't go spent on necessary purchases goes into the hobby account, so I know exactly how much money I have available to spend on my hobby without causing any financial issues. Although we have our list, we've got various options we can look at, and we've got a means of knowing what the overall budget is. Can we still control the budgeting within our hobby itself that will give us even more options? That's something you should always be aware of. Even after you've started your hobby, there's a need to continue to budget and save money. But you can even increase your budget even further following the tips we'll give you in this video, and a few yet to come. When dealing with an ongoing budget, my biggest tip for myself and others is to ensure you're not spending what you don't have. Because if you do, it only means you'll have less to spend overall, just for a short gain, and a lot less in the long run. Sometimes what you want and need can collide, but we don't have to exclude everything. We just need to look for ways you can save money in other areas, shift some finances to other aspects of the hobby you appreciate more, or finances could provide overall benefits to your hobby. Saving up so you don't go into debt is vital, but you can take this even further by doing a big saving spree. This involves keeping those funds flowing into the savings pot for 24 months. Afterwards, you'll have enough for a big hobby purchase you might have just put off. If you stick to your budgeting and your saving, you're in a better spot to get something you want, not just need. Now, is the budget, incoming and outgoings, always going to be the same? Or are there ways to help even further financing our hobbies? The most common way to fund our hobbies are via funds left over from our salaries, after we've paid the bills and bought those monthly shopping so we don't starve. Putting these leftover funds into a hobby, allows us to see how much we can spend. It doesn't stop there though. Can you think of other ways to finance your hobbies? Let's take a look. Side hustles. These are a means in which we create additional funds outside of our salary based role. This could be the reselling of products, offering your services to others, or making products to sell. These can generate additional funds that can go straight into the hobby fund, allowing for even more budget options, ensuring that getting into debt is even more difficult. Self-funding. There are hobbies that can help fund themselves. For example, artists can sell their works, and this can contribute to the upkeep and participation of the hobby. So less money is required overall because you're putting money back into the fund to sustain the hobby. You could even put the finances elsewhere to alleviate other problems, allowing for the contribution and enjoyment of said hobby. Budgets and finances are ever changing. As such, let's have a look at that extra column we made early on when first looking at our finances. The list we make for our needs, wants, and the budgets we actually have can change over time. This is why it's good to have space on your list for future changes and possibilities. Now, this could be due to new involvement or discoveries within your hobby, new ways of saving money on your hobby, or that your budget has increased due to additional finances coming in to support your hobby. With that in mind, use the third column to try and predict these shifts in your finances. Incoming finances, what future needs and wants you could purchase. That way, you know what you need now, what you want in the future, and what you will be able to afford, one or both. You also might find as you progress with your hobby, you might not need as much equipment. Some of it you can sell on as it was just for training purposes, giving you some additional funds for your hobby. Or you could be teaching others about this hobby, and that allows it to fund itself and a potential future hobby. You might want to look into that as well. Always take stock of your finances, your situation, and your needs, ensuring each purchase is made carefully, with purpose, and ensures the continuing enjoyment of your hobby without going into debt. As always, I'm trying to get the community involved in this thought process. As such, let me know your budgeting, spending, and financing tips. You could help me and the rest of the community fund our hobbies. If you've got a dilemma or question for the community around this subject matter, leave it in the comments and we'll try to help you the best we can with our less than professional advice. But it's well placed nonetheless. I know this has been a bit of a overwhelming introduction into the wonderful world of hobby finances, but I will be breaking down parts mentioned here in other videos. But it was important to me to cover this early on, as I know a lot of people struggle with funding their hobbies or overspending. Finances can be boring and complicated, but just know doing so avoids future problems and therefore allows you to enjoy your hobby more without the stress of hanging over you. Don't forget to check the description of this video for video recommendations, content creator recommendations, comment suggestions, and just helpful advice. There might also be helpful tips in these suddenly appearing well-timed videos and playlists that are floating around me. In other matters, I do like having all these badges on my jacket, but it also means I've got to wear the jacket in every video. I'll see how it goes, but mostly I'm just rather lazy when it comes to pinning and repinning them every time. First world problems, right? See you in the next video.